Okay, time for part three. I assume everybody's practiced with the first exercise I put up. You've done all those little drawings. You're pretty comfortable with it. Now you're ready to trace around an actual image. So um, those of you who've used Photoshop in the past may recognize this image I'm getting ready to use to trace. It's kind of funny. It's actually a little embarrassing. Um, it's called Ducky. I don't know why it's not bringing it. There it is. You'll place any image that you want to in Illustrator, anything that you've drawn. I'll provide this one in the announcement as well. You can go Google it. It's called the Adobe Photoshop Ducky. And it was part of the old Photoshop sample image folder. But I used it for years just to teach my students how to trace around the edge of something. And this is such a great little example because it's got nice big curves and all kinds of ups and downs on it. It's got a couple of corners around his head. So once you're comfortable with the other exercise, come over here and grab your pen and see if you can do it. So you want to zoom in a little bit. Remember, you can zoom in with your command plus or minus buttons. You can hold your space bar down to scroll around. You hit the P button, brings up your pen tool. Make sure you've got no fill set here. Maybe you've got a black stroke, which would be fine. The best place to start tracing is in a corner. It doesn't mean you have to, but there's a corner right here. There's also a corner right up here on his head. I'm going to start on the one on his head just to make it more visible. You can go any direction. You can go clockwise or counterclockwise, whatever direction you want. Makes sense to me to go clockwise. And then you start trying to figure out how to go around the edge of them. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it's better to be a little bit inside of the duck than outside of it, because if you go outside of him too far, you'll allow white from the background to show. So this is just practice, okay? So I expect you to draw it, start, and don't let yourself stop until you go all the way around. I don't care if you do the craziest curve. Go all the way around him. If you don't like it, close the path, delete it, and do it again, okay? Don't stop and say, oh, messed up, got to try. No, you just got to go all the way around it. It's the rules, okay? So I'm going to put my first point there. Now, your first challenge is going to be, man, where do I put the next point? Do I put it like right here? Can I go all the way to the top of his head? Can I go way over here? It's trial and error, okay? Remember, the rule is you want to go as far as you can before you drop a curve or a point and to make a curve. I have a tendency to think of his head like the top half of the circle that we drew earlier. So we're kind of at 9 o'clock right here. I'm thinking I can go to 12 o'clock, drop a point right there and drag this curve over. Look at that. I was able to line it up just right on his head. Now, the thing is I drug that handlebar pretty far, so it's going to affect what happens over here now. If I put the point too close up here at the top, see how it starts to loop back down to his head? So Illustrator's giving you a guide. It's telling you, you may want to drop a point until you get somewhere down about right here. I'm going to drop it right there and drag a little bit the direction that I'm going. Look, I'm not dragging in towards the duck's head. I'm not dragging away from his head out into the white space. I'm dragging along his contour edge. And that's how you want to think about it. Drag along the contour edge, let go. Come down a little farther. Now here's where you have to make your first kind of anticipatory move. You need to land on this last point down here. Now I could possibly do the Christmas tree trick that I showed you earlier. I could click and drag here until I get a curve that I like, and look at that. I can come back now and chop that handlebar off and make it into a corner point. That worked perfectly. Now I didn't have to do that. I might have tried this. I might have come about to right here and placed a curve, and that will probably work out the same way, but I don't like it as much. So I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom, pull a pretty long curve, and I'm not worried how far I have to pull this because I'm going to trim it. I'm going to trim it by clicking on the point. And now we just start working our way around his back. See, I'm going to go about right here. Click, drag the direction I'm going. Now, the three things you have to remember is where to click, how far to drag, and which direction that you drag. Where to click, you aim for the high points and the low points. How far to drag? Look, I just drug that handlebar a little bit because I had a real tight curve. How far to drag really depends on how big of a curve you want. I need a fairly big curve here. I'm going to drag that way. And the direction that you drag is the third thing to remember, and it's you drag along the contour edge of the shape. Like I'm going to try to come all the way down here on the next point. Drag a curve. I'm going to try all the way about here on the next one, maybe about right in here. It's not perfect. I've got a little bit of white showing down at the bottom. I'll have to come back and fix that. And I got all kinds of crazy right there. I'm going to come back, try this again. Kind of working my way through these little tight curves. Tighter curves require more points, so don't panic. You may need to zoom in to see what you're doing up here along his mouth. It's no big deal. You cannot mess up, because you can always come back and fix it. So messing up is not an option. It just doesn't happen. You come back and you make it better. See, so I've got a pretty good path around that duck. I'm going to grab my white pointer tool now and come back down here and bring this handlebar in just slightly. Adjust the position of the point just slightly. And you get the idea. I've drawn a path around the duck. You know, now I could come back, fill that path in with a color. Then I could do the shape of the bill next and do the eyes. Thinking of it as cut paper, you know, I could come up with some shadow pieces and work my way all the way around it. But that's how do you get a good path around the duck. See it? Fill that thing in with color, and there's the shape. So you need to practice this duck. Go around him. Look how many points I did it in. You know, got about, hey, somebody's 10, 11, 12, 13, I got about 18 points or so. I mean, I could have been done with less than that. But remember, the rule is the fewer the points, the more control and the smoother your curve will be. And the goal is really beautiful, smooth, non-flat spot, non-lumpy curves. Okay. So you want to bring the duck into your file by doing File, Place. I'll have the file ready for you, and you can just place it in, drop it on your screen, size it up the size you want it. Take your pen and try to trace around it. Once you're comfortable with that, and don't worry about all the other parts. Just see if you can go around the edge of them. Once you go around the edge of them, it may take 4 or 5 tries. My students usually spend about half an hour on this one until I'm pretty comfortable with what they're doing, and then I can green light them to move on to the next part. The next part will be the actual drawing of that hawk. Okay, that will be the end of this video. Part 4, final part, coming next.